Margaret Hayes had built her life on two foundations: faith and family. At 63, she'd spent 40 years creating a home filled with warmth, Sunday dinners, and unconditional love. Her daughter, Caroline, was her greatest joy, the child she'd raised with tenderness, the young woman she'd guided through heartbreaks and triumphs. Margaret had silver-streaked hair that she wore in soft curls, warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled, and hands that always seemed to be cooking, knitting, or reaching out to comfort someone. She wore elegant scarves, her signature touch, and carried herself with quiet dignity. But on a Tuesday afternoon in March, scrolling through Facebook while waiting for her doctor's appointment, Margaret's carefully constructed world cracked open. There was Caroline, in a wedding dress, radiant and beautiful, surrounded by smiling faces Margaret had never seen before. The caption read, "Best day of my life. 3 months married and couldn't be happier." 3 months. Margaret stared at the screen until her vision blurred. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the photos. Caroline with her arms around a young man, her husband, apparently. Caroline laughing with his parents. Caroline cutting a cake Margaret hadn't baked. No phone call, no invitation, no explanation, just silence. That night, Margaret sat in her garden as the sun set, wrapped in the same gray scarf she wore in her favorite photos. The tomatoes she'd planted needed staking. The roses needed deadheading. Everything continued growing, blooming, living as if her heart hadn't just shattered. She thought about calling Caroline, demanding answers, begging for reasons, but a deeper hurt settled into her bones. If Caroline could exclude her from the most important day of her life, what did that say about all the years Margaret had devoted to being her mother? By dawn, Margaret had made her decision. The house, the 3-bedroom colonial where Caroline had learned to walk, where they'd bake Christmas cookies every December, where Margaret had nursed her husband through his final illness, went up for sale by Thursday. Margaret accepted the first offer, well below asking price. She didn't care about the money. She packed methodically. The photo albums went into storage, too painful to keep, too precious to destroy. Caroline's childhood artwork, her baby clothes, her high school trophies, all boxed away. Margaret told no one her plans. Not the neighbors who'd known Caroline since she was in diapers. Not the ladies from church who'd thrown Caroline a graduation party. Not even her sister in Ohio. She simply left. Margaret moved to a small coastal town in Maine, a place where no one knew her story. She rented a tiny cottage with blue shutters and a view of the harbor. She took a part-time job at the library, volunteered at the food bank, and slowly built a new life from the pieces of her broken heart. Months passed. Then a year. Caroline tried to reach her once. A single text message, "Mom, where are you? Why won't you answer? Please call me, Margaret." Read it 17 times. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, composing and deleting responses until finally, she set the phone down and made herself a cup of tea instead. What could she say? That the exclusion had hurt more than any betrayal. That a mother's love shouldn't be treated as optional. That some wounds don't heal with a simple explanation. She said nothing. In her new town, Margaret became known for her kindness. She tutored children who struggled with reading. She brought soup to elderly neighbors. She listened, truly listened when people needed to talk. But at night, alone in her cottage, she grieved. Not just for the wedding she'd missed, but for the relationship that had somehow fractured without her understanding how or why. 2 years after leaving, Margaret received a letter. Not a text, a real letter, on cream-colored stationery, in Caroline's familiar handwriting. "Dear Mom, don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know the truth. I didn't tell you about the wedding because I was ashamed. David's family is wealthy, so wealthy that I felt like I didn't belong. They questioned everything about me, including you. They made comments about your house, your job, the way we lived. I was weak, Mom. I thought if I kept the wedding small and quiet, I could avoid their judgment. I thought I was protecting you from their cruelty. Instead, I hurt you far worse than they ever could have. David and I are divorced now. It turns out, a marriage built on shame and secrets doesn't last. His family's money couldn't buy respect or real love. I've spent these 2 years understanding what I lost. Not just you, but myself. The version of me that you raised, the one who knew that love and character matter more than wealth or status. I don't expect you to answer this letter. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I cry myself to sleep with regret, that I would give anything, everything to undo what I did. I love you, Mom. I always have. I always will. Even if you can never love me again. Caroline Margaret read the letter sitting at her kitchen table as morning light streamed through the window. Tears rolled down her cheeks, dropping onto the paper and smudging the ink. She thought about the little girl who'd once held her hand crossing streets, the teenager who'd confided her dreams and fears, the young woman she'd raised to be strong and independent, and she thought about the power of shame, how it makes us betray the people who love us most, how it convinces us that protection looks like exclusion. Margaret picked up her phone. She didn't call. Not yet. She needed time to process, to feel, to decide what forgiveness might look like after such profound hurt. But she saved the letter, and for the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps some broken things, given time and truth and tremendous courage, might eventually be mended. Not today, maybe not for a long while, but someday, because that's what mothers do. Even when their hearts are shattered into 1,000 pieces, they find a way to hope, even if that hope comes with tears of both sorrow and possibility. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from those we love most, and sometimes healing requires both distance and truth and the courage to believe in love again. In After Betrayal.